Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are continuing a little stroll down memory lane by looking at the 2023 Japan Chess Classic, which happened here in Kobe, Japan. And this was the tournament where I finally got my first FIDE rating. We are looking at round 6 now, so we've already covered the first rounds and you can go look at those videos separately. But at this point of the tournament we are very happy with performance overall, and we are looking to close off the last day with a really good game in the morning and then in the afternoon. So in round 6 we were facing Yuma Okabe, another younger opponent. He's maybe high school or secondary school, I'm not so sure. And he's quite strong, almost 1900 FIDE. And I've seen him around both before this tournament and afterwards. And he has continued to climb. So definitely one of those up and coming young players here in Japan. And I was white once again, same as the previous tournament and the previous game, apologies. And you will actually recognize this game. So I'm just going to go open very quickly. So d4, knight of 6, c4. I go with f3 again, which is a way to avoid the Grunfeld. And you will actually recognize this position, I think up to here, up to move 7, because we played this exact same position a few rounds earlier against another young and upcoming player here in Japan. And after the game, it actually turned out that the two of them were talking. And the one who I played in, I think, round 3 or something, told this opponent of mine, oh, with white, he plays this way. We got into this opening, and this is how I won. And so this opponent maybe found one or two of my games, but basically just decided to play the same opening against me. So very unfortunate. I trotted out the Samisch variation against the King's Indian defense once again for the second time this tournament. And my opponent already knows it's coming, so not that much of a surprise. However, here on move 7, he deviates from how the first game went by playing e6. So e6 in this position is actually the top theory move, so clearly my opponent had booked up on this variation beforehand. And the point is just that black is now coming to try and chip away at white's d5 pawn and a little bit of white's control in the center of the board. So I continue in queen d2, and so in this variation now, queen d2 in this case makes sense. This is actually the top move. They take, I take back with the c pawn. Taking with the e pawn opens up the e file, and it just spells all kinds of trouble for white. You definitely don't want to do that. And here they played rook e8, which is, I think, like the second or third move, but it's still one of the theory moves, and this whole line is very, very well balanced. White wins, black wins, and there's a few draws. So this is a great line to play if you're looking for some action, but probably nicer if your opponent isn't much further booked up than you. Alright, so rook e8, and here what I'm supposed to do is I'm supposed to start jumping my knight out, but I instead moved my bishop to e2, slightly incorrect. But after black plays knight b d7, I wonder if you saw in the previous video we discussed this in detail, but the move here for white is knight h3, and this time I actually remembered this and I played it. And the point of this move is that currently the light square bishop cannot take my knight, so black cannot ruin my pawn structure, and I can jump my knight over to f2, which is where I want it for when I start pushing my pawns on the king's side. So this is a really, really nice thing to remember if you're playing this kind of variation. There's a few variations for white that go similarly to this, but specifically in the Sämisch, where you move your f pawn and not your g or h pawn yet. If they block off the light square bishop, this is the great time for you to kind of jump out your knight. This is obviously slightly incorrect for black though. They actually should have just continued here with a different move in this position. Maybe going the knight in the other direction is better, but they did this and I finally kind of gotten the lesson from my first game at least. And I jumped my knight out to h3, and now I'm going to jump it into f2 and I'll be a little bit happier. So they come with knight e5, a great spot for the knight, and I can start pushing the knight away with f4 at some point, but in the meantime I'm so glad I got knight f2 in, so I'm really happy about that. I put it on the board, and here after a6 I continue in the same way that I normally continue with this kind of stuff, and I just play a4. And actually we're kind of like transposing back into some more theory, some more kind of master games, because we went a little bit off when I played the wrong move earlier, but black has allowed me to transpose back into some mainline stuff, so I'm really happy about that, because at least it means that I'm not completely incorrect, although I've mixed up my move order a bit. So here they go with h5, I go with h3. So this is the same thing on the opposite side of the board. They go for 2 steps. This time I go for one. Earlier they went for 1 step, I went for two. And this also maybe, sets me up to play something like g5, g4 later to try and bust open the king side if I want to. All right. Now they're starting to infiltrate with their queen, and this is a move I didn't really see coming, and I struggled a lot to figure out what to do against this. So first off, I decide I'm going to castle kingside because I've already moved my a pawn and I don't have a c pawn anymore. So going queenside makes very little sense for me, and this is the correct way to think about it. So I'm happy I got that in. But now they continue. Oh, sorry, apologies. First, they try to move their knight back. I think they want to reroute it this way. But I found that there's a little weakness here, so I can immediately attack their backwards pawn. So they just put the knight back, and I move my dark square bishop back. I don't want it here because I want to be able to f4 at some point, right? Okay, so black realizes that they can't jump their knight this way. I'm going to force them into a perpetual if they do. Being an 1880 rated player, if I get a draw here, it's really good for my kind of goal of creating my first FIDE rating, so I'd be very happy with it. So instead, they just decide to move their queen in a little bit further. And sorry, this is what I was trying to talk about a bit earlier. The queen move originally was a bit uncertain for me, but the more they moved it, the more confused I got. Clearly, the king move now allows them to jump their knight in. Might have to take with my light square bishop. And also, after they get this knight in, the queen also puts some pressure on the b pawn, which might eventually have something to do with their dark square bishop, which is fianchettoed. So I was very uncomfortable about this. It's not actually really good for black, but I was just not really sure what they're doing. And unfortunately for this tournament, in multiple of these games, you'll hear me saying something. I was unsure, I was uncomfortable. And there's kind of two things to this. Number one, I tried to prep for this tournament. And so as soon as we went off of theory, I felt, oh no, I don't know what's going on. But that's the wrong way to think about it. And I actually discussed this a bit in a recent stream as well, where when, at least for me personally, if I prep a lot, I get kind of fixated on playing the best moves and I get uncomfortable playing in a position that's not part of the theory that I looked at, which happens in any game anyway, right? So it's a really, really silly mindset problem to have. And it's something that I've worked on since then. But definitely in this tournament, I was still struggling with the whole thing of prepping and then facing things that aren't part of my prep and then what do I do? So yeah, less prep might be better for me personally. At least just as a general, not as a never prep kind of thing. So anyway, I decide I can continue with just putting my rook over here. I'm defending the knight in case I want to move the pawn at some point. I can also maybe, move the knight out of the way and then I'll still be covering the c4 square. And they decide to just bring out the light square bishop. They're putting some pressure on my a pawn. It's still currently defended. They're also connecting their rooks at the back, so it's just a good move. However, the actual position, according to the engine, is getting better and better for me. So although black is playing things that I'm getting uncomfortable with, it's actually not best. And I'm still doing quite well, but I don't know exactly what I want to do, and that's causing me to spend more time than I should have on some of these moves. And now in this position, I decide, okay, hang on, I'm going to play f4, and I'm going to start pushing that knight out of the way. And unfortunately, f4 was the better move earlier on. But in this position, it doesn't work anymore and actually lose some of my advantage according to the engine. And as you see this continuation now, you'll realize that it probably wasn't the best because my mindset and my plan that I had made actually doesn't work. I should be trying to just control the game here on the queen side, and eventually I will have control and black will have to be pushed back, maybe with their queen or something similar, and I will get the initiative out of the position. But my thinking here was that I want to open up the game in the middle of the board, which makes very little sense because my rooks are on this side of the board, so why am I trying to open up the middle? It's a little bit unfortunate. I was thinking about my bishops and maybe my knights, but unfortunately I had played the wrong rook over if I want to do that. Although obviously I was trying to make sure that that pawn was doubly defended. Anyway, so I played f4, but just to show you kind of what the engine said I should have done, don't I just like drop my bishop? But actually, after I do this, I can completely get the queen stuck. So they can't take, because here you go, and then your queen can't get away anymore. So the actual line would go They play g5, which seems really strange, right? Because they're sacking a piece, but it's because they have to stop me at least in some way, and actually because the position is really really good for white. But neither of us, I think, were quite clear on the actual engine analysis in terms of the um, strength of the position. Trying to force a trade of queens. Now they're waiting for it. I take. I jump my knight out, and I'll just go down to the bottom. So this is kind of what apologies. This is kind of what the angel sensor should be doing, but I don't think black would ever have tried to trade off their queen, and I was very uncomfortable trying to play b3 at any point because I didn't really know exactly what would happen in the position. Although looking at it afterwards, yeah, b3 is really safe actually, and it just helps me cover off the c4 square, which is the one that their knight might want to jump into. So a little bit unfortunate. I didn't clearly see the fact that the queen would get stuck here, but it happens. We don't always see everything. So I continue with f4 in this position. I'm trying to push back in the middle now. I think I've got a lot of good kind of development going on here, although yeah, it's a little bit skeptical if it's really that good. Anyway, they jump their knight in, and this is what I said. Once they jump, I have to take, unfortunately. So I do take. They take with their queen. And I was really, really excited to make some amazing jump here, but I just couldn't, like, make it work. And I kept seeing the fact that they can jump and take here. So I, for instance, was looking at, oh, okay, hang on, what if I like do this? You know, I'm hitting their queen. But then they can do this, hitting my queen. And after they take, they'd be hitting my rook as well. And then my knight's still hanging, and then this. So then I'm like, okay, hang on. Maybe I would take the rook, you know, then they take here. And then I'm like, okay, hang on, I should jump sideways. And I got so flustered with the whole position. Hang on, I'm going to like save my rook. But this is also hanging. So the whole position was not looking so good for me. So I decided I'm going to push in the middle like I've been planning. And this is a massive disaster. The problem really is that I'm not set up for this. The way I've developed the position doesn't allow me to have much. I've opened up this square for the light square bishop on black side. They've got an active rook down this file. My rooks are kind of sitting in the corner. And I'm not really taking possession of the right squares. I need to take possession of this square, for instance, right? E4 is very important because they're looking at it with their rook, the queen, and with their knight. So I could have done a few other moves here, for instance. I could have moved my queen back just to get it out of the range of the knight jump there, and then I could have considered other things. I mean, as I said, this move just doesn't work. But here we go. I'm opening up the middle. They take with the pawn. And in this case, I realized like this isn't going to work, right? This pawn is twice defended, but after I take here, they can take this one. And then this pawn isn't like defended enough times. And I can't defend it again, unfortunately. If I go here, they just end up like crashing through my position, basically. So instead, I decided, okay, cool, I'm going to jump over my knight. I'm going to trade off this scary knight, and at least this opens up against their queen as well. So, you know, I win a tempo. But yeah, it doesn't work, unfortunately, because as I just said, my queen is in range of the e4 knight jump, so I have to take their queen, they take me, and in this case, I take back. And I'm like, okay, maybe things aren't that bad, but actually things are absolutely terrible. If you look at the position, they've got the bishop pair, and they've got a very, very clear pawn structure here, and the other pawns on that side of the board are still kind of okay. I would say this e pawn is kind of, you know, whichever, but clearly they've got really, really good access for all their pieces. On my side, if you look in comparison, I've got these two pawns, and then I've got a isolated queen's pawn that's already pushed too far for me to like really actively defend it. I have to push it one square further before I can defend it with my knight. It's on the wrong color to defend with my bishop. And I've got two pawns here, and then I can trade off this one. So it's not looking good in terms of just the general setup. My knight has like one good square, but after that I'm not really sure where it's going to go because I have nothing really to attack that easily, and black's going to end up having some great positional chances here. So I take the pawn thinking, hey, okay, well, you know, let me do that. Instead, what I should have done, I should have jumped my knight in already, and then they can move the over because I'm kind of coming in here to make some chaos on their side of the board. Not because I'm actually winning, but you know, just doing something. And obviously, if they take here, they can also open up the dark side bishop. So you know, I decided I should take before they take because then I felt that as soon as they take, they'll be coming into the position. It's really scary for me, but this is not the right way to play. They take with the rook. So now they're just attacking this pawn. They can double up on the e-file, which they've taken control of, and they're still waiting to unleash their bishops at the right moment. I push the pawn to try and save it. They attack my bishop at the bottom, and I try to defend the pawn because thankfully it's on the right square now. But now obviously I drop the b pawn, and after they take the b pawn, they've got a 3-on-1 advantage, right, on the queen side, which is difficult to take care of. At the same time, I've got this last bishop, but it's currently just kind of protecting a pawn. And I've got this knight, which doesn't really know where it needs to go anymore. And my rook is also just kind of hanging out. So I attack the bishop, they attack my rook. And I realize here that the problem is as soon as I move this rook somewhere, they're just pushing past. And they've got connected passes. They're also taking my a pawn at that point. And the position is going to get really, really bad. So I decided instead I would take the bishop, and once they take, at least it breaks their pawn structure up. So they don't have connected passes, they've just got isolated passes now on the c file. So that feels a little bit like something I could stop a little bit easier. But my a pawn is obviously also hanging, so life is tough. I go into attack. I'm thinking instead of trying to defend my pawn and defend these, I should try and make something happen with my isolated queen's pawn. Maybe I can force them to sack it for something else. The nice thing is that it is promoting on a dark square, which also connects with my bishop. So I'm thinking maybe that's the better way to go instead of getting defensive in this position. So I go, and they don't take my pawn. They actually just put the bishop on a really nice active square. It also cuts off my knight completely. So you can see here, um, black is really, really thinking quite nicely about the position. They don't have to win an additional pawn. They can just shut my knight out completely. And then with the two rooks versus the one, they can slowly, slowly build. Also, it's going to be really hard to actually promote this, but that's my plan. So I want to hit that bishop out of the way because I can, and also I don't mind trading off the h pawns. They come after my pawn on the other side, and they're still stopping my knight from coming in. So here I go with my pawn, and they stop it, and life's tough. This is double attacked. I can't defend it more than once. They were basically just waiting for me to push, unfortunately. So I decided to go after the a pawn. At least I'm defending mine. They push my Dartford bishop back, but you can see again, my knight can't go anywhere. My Dartford bishop's also kind of stuck right now. So I'm really, really struggling to get my pieces onto good squares. So I decide to take here. And the reason, and this is actually the best move, very, very sad. So this is all under attack, this is under attack, this is under attack, I can't go backwards, and if I go here, I just get forked. So here, fork, and then it gets taken. So I figure I can at least get a pawn for the bishop, but clearly the position is very, very bad for me. They take, I push my a pawn, and I decide, okay, I'll try and get my king in somewhere, at least also off of the file that their rook is on, and they drop their light square bishop back. Why do they drop their light square bishop back? Oh, I'll give it 1 second. After I check them to push them forward, the light square bishop was in the way of their pawn, and they just straight up coming to promote now. So what can I do? Very little, unfortunately. I've got this, but it doesn't actually work. They're going to promote in a second, and I can jump away for a second, but this is completely losing, right? So I should have resigned maybe 5 moves ago, but I wanted to play out just to see what the position would look like, and I didn't go all the way to Kobe just to resign. I wanted to play chess. So even if I'm losing, I'm playing for a little bit longer. They promote. I can stop the queen because my knight is protecting it, and they find a great little in-between move. They just push my king out of the way. And in this situation, my my knight can't defend the pawn and the rook at the same time. After I push out of the way, everything's just crumbling. Maybe I can take that. They take here, but yeah, I'm obviously completely lost. If we look over to what the analysis chart looks like, you'll see here that I was actually doing fairly well off the opening because black decided to come at me kind of the incorrect way, moving their queen all. So in here you'll see moving their queen in around here. This whole situation was good. Unfortunately, as soon as I started to play f3, f4, f3, e5, everything went downhill. So at first, it was just throwing away the advantage I had built, and as soon as I played e5, things just went incredibly downhill from there. So unfortunately for me, I didn't get to even get as remote chance to draw this game. My opponent was not only prepped for me, but clearly just much more comfortable on the board and with the position. Even playing kind of a suboptimal and slightly dubious way, they just ended up crushing me. Maybe mentally, I would say. I didn't know how to play against this position. I completely misinterpreted my potential plans. So that with that loss, I finished the last day's first game a little bit disappointed, and especially when he told me the other opponent, the other younger guy, student, the kid had told him, "No, this is what they played." I was a bit like, "Oh, this is unfortunate. I'm losing to all the young kids in this tournament." But if you haven't, in your own experience, seen this, do remember that young players are very dangerous. Anyway, so I finished off. It's a little bit unfortunate. I'm at 3.5 out of 6 at this point, though, so not the end of the world. I'm still slightly over. And we're going into our last game, and our last game has an amazing final boss for this tournament. It was the reason I decided to make a write-up for the tournament as a whole, because I really, really enjoyed our last game. So stick around, and then I'll see you again next time. Stick around, I'll see you next time. Anyway, see you in the next video. Ciao.